It was a bright, cloudless morning in the kind of neighborhood where everything seemed perfectly in place. Trimmed hedges, polished driveways, pastel houses lined in symmetry, and security cameras that blinked quietly from every corner. But something about this morning felt different. A woman was walking slowly up the stone path to number 14, a tall, dark-skinned woman in a crisp navy blouse and soft-soled shoes. Her name was Amara. She moved with calm purpose, holding a leather tote in one hand and a small notebook in the other. Her braids were tied back neatly, her shoulders squared, her expression unreadable except for a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. It was the kind of smile that said, "I know what you're thinking, and I'm still walking in." Across the street, Mrs. Tisdale lowered her sunglasses to get a better look. 2 houses down, a boy on a bicycle paused, staring before pedaling away fast. And through the laced curtains of the Sanders home, 3 heads peeked out, whispering things that no one dared say aloud in public, but that had already been texted to the neighborhood WhatsApp group. The Winstons hired a black nanny. At the door, Claire Winston stood stiffly in a beige cashmere sweater, her expression composed and strained. She extended her hand quickly, but pulled it back just as fast, as if realizing halfway that this wasn't a habit she wanted to form. "Must be Amara," she said. "I am," Amara replied warmly. Claire offered a tight nod. "Come in. The children are in the sunroom. Daniel's just getting back from tennis." Amara stepped into the house. It smelled like fresh linen, lemon polish, and something more subtle, a tension that lingered just beneath the surface. The kind that didn't come from disorder, but from the exhausting effort it took to maintain a perfect facade. As she walked through the pristine hallway, Amara noticed the framed photos, family vacations, holiday cards, awards. In each one, Claire's smile was flawless, Daniel's posture straight, and the children, Max and Lily, posed like catalog models. Picture perfect, but even perfect homes have shadows. In the sunroom, Lily sat curled in a window seat, clutching a stuffed rabbit whose ear had clearly been chewed over and over. Max sat opposite her, holding an iPad but not looking at it. When they saw Amara, Lily tightened her grip on the rabbit. Max squinted, as if trying to make sense of her. Neither spoke. "Kids," Claire said, her voice a shade too cheerful. "This is Miss Amara. She'll be helping us for a while." Lily looked away. Max muttered something under his breath. Amara didn't force a smile. She simply sat down, not too close, and looked at them both. "Nice to meet you," she said softly. "You can call me Ama if you want, or just Amara." The silence was thick, and Claire cleared her throat. "Well, I'll let you all get acquainted," she said. "Lunch is at 1. No nuts. Lily's allergic." And then she left, quickly. Amara remained seated. She didn't ask the children questions. She didn't start a game. She simply sat, present and quiet, as if waiting for a signal that would come only when they were ready. Outside the window, the Winstons' neighbor stood watering her garden, but her eyes were glued to the scene inside. She didn't bother to pretend she wasn't watching. Amara saw her, and smiled. The woman looked away. Daniel entered the room 20 minutes later, gym bag in hand, tennis racket slung over his shoulder. He paused when he saw Amara, his expression not unkind, just surprised, as if expecting someone else, as if she didn't quite match the image in his mind. "Hi there," he said, adjusting quickly. "I'm Daniel. Good to meet you." Amara stood and shook his hand firmly. "Likewise. Settling in okay?" She nodded. "Just getting to know Max and Lily." He gave a half smile and glanced at the kids, who still hadn't said a word. "They've had a tough year," he added, his tone dropping slightly. Amara just nodded again. Later, as she walked to the kitchen to wash her hands, she passed Claire in the hallway. "Everything all right?" Claire asked, not quite looking at her. Double quotes, "Yes." "Thank you, Amara," replied Dot, Claire hesitated. If the children seemed withdrawn, don't take it personally. They can be sensitive. I understand. Claire's gaze lingered a second too long. Then she walked away. Back in the sunroom, Amara sat again. The children were still quiet. That was fine. She had time. Healing wasn't something you rushed. Trust wasn't something you demanded. And prejudice, well, that was something she'd faced before. She looked out the window again. The neighbor had disappeared. The street looked peaceful again. But that smile, the one she wore when no one else would, it stayed. Because Amara knew something they didn't. She hadn't come just to take care of children. She had come to change everything, and the first step was being exactly who they didn't expect. The silence at the Winston household was deceptive. It wasn't peaceful. It was held together by tension, routine, and the kind of politeness that cracks when no one's watching. The children didn't scream or misbehave. They didn't throw tantrums or break things. No, Lily and Max had a different kind of unrest. The quiet kind. The kind that settled in their bones and made them impossible to reach. Amara had been there for only a few hours, but she could already feel it. The stillness wasn't calm. It was grief sealed in marble. Later that evening, Claire gave Amara a house tour. Her tone was clipped, professional, as she pointed out where the medicines were, how to work the security system, what the bedtime routine was supposed to be, even though, she admitted reluctantly, bedtime rarely went as planned. They don't sleep well, she said. Max has night terrors. Lily sleepwalks sometimes. They're sensitive. Amara nodded. Since when? Claire paused by the stairwell, hand tightening on the banister. Since Ava passed, there it was, the unspoken name, the ghost in every room. Ava, Amara asked gently. Our oldest, Claire replied, voice flat. She drowned in the pool 5 months ago. She said it like she was reading from a police report. No tremble in the voice, no crack in the armor. Just a fact, recited, not felt. I'm sorry, Amara said quietly. Claire's eyes flicked toward her. It was an accident, she added quickly. It wasn't anyone's fault. The lifeguard got distracted. Ava was a strong swimmer, but things happen. That's life. She turned and walked up the stairs before Amara could say another word. In the guest room that night, the one Amara would now call hers, she sat with her notebook open, jotting quiet observations. Max avoided eye contact. Lily clung to objects instead of people. Claire seemed to bristle at emotional expression. Daniel remained absent, and then there were the nannies. Amara had found a list tucked into the drawer in the kitchen, a calendar scribbled with names and crossed out days. Janice, Eliza, Cora, Mira. 2 more names she couldn't read. 6 nannies in less than a month. Each had lasted days, not weeks. I don't know what's wrong with them, Claire had said at dinner, when Amara gently brought up the turnover. You'd think they'd be grateful for the opportunity. Daniel said nothing, just stared at his plate, pushing food around like a man whose appetite had left months ago. After dinner, Amara helped Lily into her pajamas. The child was silent, but her hands trembled when Amara buttoned her top. Max refused to change, curling up in a chair instead, staring at the floor like he was expecting it to swallow him whole. Claire stood in the doorway watching. Some of the nannies said they were too attached, that it made the job difficult. Too attached? Amara asked, gently. Claire's mouth twitched. They get clingy, and then emotional. It's exhausting. I need someone who won't make it worse. Amara nodded, but said nothing. That night, when the children were finally in bed, not asleep, just lying there with eyes wide open, Amara sat alone in the kitchen, reading between the lines of everything she had seen so far. The children weren't clingy. They were scared. And Claire wasn't cruel. She was numb, like someone who had built a wall so high, even her own grief couldn't climb over it. Daniel, in contrast, seemed to be floating just beneath the surface, aware of everything, but saying nothing, as if silence could hold the family together. At exactly 2:17 a.m., Amara woke to soft crying. She tiptoed down the hall and found Max sitting at the top of the stairs, clutching a pillow. He didn't notice her at first. He was whispering something. She should have had the floaties, I told her. Amara sat down 3 steps below him, saying nothing, just listening. She said big girls don't wear floaties. Still, she stayed silent. I didn't mean it, Max whispered. I didn't mean to let go. His voice cracked, and he pressed the pillow against his face, shoulders shaking. Amara didn't reach out. Not yet. Instead, she said gently, "It wasn't your fault." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. His face was tear-streaked, pale in the moonlight. "How do you know?" he asked. "Because I know what guilt sounds like," she said softly, "and it always tells the same lie." Max stared at her, and for a second, something shifted. Then a door creaked behind them. Claire stood there, arms folded. "I don't think it's helpful to dig into all of that," she said, voice low and sharp. Amara didn't respond. Max stood and walked past his mother without a word. Claire turned to Amara. "If you're going to be here, I expect you to keep things calm, not stir things up." "Understood." Amara gave a small nod. "Understood." The next morning Daniel found her in the kitchen making toast. "Rough night?" he asked. Amara shrugged. Max couldn't sleep. Daniel sighed. "It's been like that since. You know, we tried therapy. Didn't work." "Maybe it was the wrong kind," Amara said gently. Daniel looked at her, surprised. "You think there's a right kind?" "I do." He nodded slowly, almost thoughtfully. Then he left. By the end of the week, Lily had begun speaking to Amara in full sentences. Max didn't wake up crying once, but Claire's eyes grew colder, and Amara knew the children were healing, but not everyone wanted them to. 6 nannies had left in 3 weeks. She wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. By the 5th day. The change in the children was undeniable. Lily began humming softly during breakfast, not quite singing, but close. Max, once so guarded, now asked Amara if she could braid his sister's hair, like last time. Even Claire noticed. "There, less difficult," she commented over coffee, as if puzzled by her own words. Amara simply smiled. "Children respond to being seen." Claire offered a thin smile but didn't respond. The calm didn't settle easily. It made people nervous, especially people who had grown used to chaos. Claire lingered longer in doorways now, watching Amara through narrowed eyes. She hovered near the sunroom when Amara helped the children draw. She checked the nanny cam footage more frequently, replaying hours of silent footage looking for something. By Sunday afternoon, Amara found Lily curled beside her on the couch with a picture book. The little girl leaned her head against Amara's shoulder, light, trusting, natural. Daniel walked in and paused in the doorway. For the first time in months, he smiled. "She hasn't done that with anyone since." His voice trailed off. "I know," Amara said gently. But not everyone was smiling. Outside, across the picket fence, street neighbors had begun to notice the new arrangement. Not just that the Winston kids seemed suddenly more stable, but that it had happened after a black woman had been hired. The whispers started small. "I hear she's from the East End. She walks to the bus stop. Did you see that? Maybe she's too young to manage kids like those, or too different." Different. It was the word people used when they were too polite, or too cowardly, to say what they really meant. One afternoon, Amara passed 2 neighborhood mothers standing by their Range Rovers. They stopped talking as she walked by. One of them forced a smile. "Hello," Amara said warmly. They mumbled a greeting and waited until she was out of earshot, but Amara heard anyway. Daniel should be more careful, inviting someone like that into the home. That evening, Claire cornered Amara by the kitchen island. "I've been noticing," some changes. Your close with the children. Amara tilted her head. That's the goal, isn't it? Claire's jaw tightened. Yes, but it's happening fast. Too fast, I see, Amara said calmly. Claire exhaled. They're children, Miss Amara, vulnerable, impressionable. I just want to be sure there's no overstepping. No overstepping, Amara repeated. Claire folded her arms. I think we need some boundaries. No more hugging. No personal stories. And certainly no encouraging emotional dependency. Amara didn't flinch. Understood. But the warmth in her eyes dimmed slightly. She wasn't surprised. She had seen this before. Families who wanted results, but not the truth. Healing without discomfort. Comfort without connection. And always, it was the same story. The moment she got too close, the walls came up. Later that night, Daniel approached her in the hallway. Claire says the kids are getting attached, he said, almost apologetically. They're grieving, Amara replied. They're attaching because they feel safe. Daniel nodded. I know. I see it too. Then why are you letting her push them away again? He didn't answer. He just looked down and walked off. The next day, Amara arrived to find Claire already tense. Her mouth was tight. The tea kettle screamed in the background. A neighbor had stopped by that morning and, according to Claire, expressed concerns. She said you were walking around the neighborhood looking smug, Claire snapped, that you acted like you owned the place. Amara blinked. I said hello. Well, maybe tone it down. Tone it down. Amara took a breath. The words were barbed with implication. Don't be too confident. Don't act like you belong. Don't forget where you came from. She had heard it all before. Different words, same poison. Claire continued. And please don't take the children outside the gates without permission. I haven't, Amara said evenly. Well, just making sure. Some families have reputations to uphold. There it was. No longer subtle. No longer disguised. Amara nodded slowly. Of course, that night, as Max showed her a drawing of what Ava looked like in his dreams, Amara quietly reached for her phone and documented it. Not to protect herself, but to preserve proof that healing was happening, even as the house resisted. In the following days, the whispers turned into cautious distance. Neighbors who once greeted Claire with warmth now asked quietly, are you sure you're safe with someone like that around your children? The assumption was clear. That because Amara was calm, educated, and confident, she must be hiding something by Wednesday. Claire confronted her again. You're too polished, Amara. You speak like a professor. Amara gave a small smile. I studied child psychology. Well, yes, but I wonder what you're really doing here. Amara let the silence stretch. I'm caring for your children, she said gently, and they're finally beginning to breathe again. Claire's face hardened. I think you're manipulating them, making them dependent, so you can. What? Take advantage? Amara didn't reply. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any defense could be, because beneath Claire's accusations, beneath the stares from the neighbors, beneath the discomfort they refused to name, was fear, not of Amara, but of what she revealed. She exposed the gaps, the cracks, the failures they had all worked so hard to hide, and she did it simply by existing in their space, competent, kind, unbothered. That night, as Lily drifted off in her lap and Max hummed the lullaby Amara had taught him, she stared out at the streetlight, blinking in the dark. They were whispering. Let them, because they hadn't seen anything yet. The morning began gently. Lily was in the garden, crouched beside a patch of daisies, drawing their shapes in her sketchpad. Amara sat beside her on a cushion, her voice low and steady as she spoke about grief. Not like something to be feared, but like a shadow that sometimes just needs to be acknowledged before it loosens its grip. Sad isn't bad, Amara said, pointing to the crayon in Lily's hand. It's just another feeling. Like yellow is happy and blue is quiet. Lily looked up. Was Ava sad before the sky took her? Amara paused. I think Ava was missing someone too, but I also think she knew you loved her. The little girl blinked, then nodded. What, Amara? Didn't see was Claire standing inside the kitchen, watching through the window. Her hand was frozen mid-wipe over a countertop, her jaw clenched. By the time lunch arrived, the air in the house had shifted. Claire moved with sharp movements. The plates clattered too loud. The silence between her and Amara stretched longer than usual. When Daniel came home early from a meeting, Claire asked him to join her and Amara in the living room. The tone in her voice made it clear this wasn't a request. Amara sat straight, on the edge of the couch. Daniel, confused, took a seat next to her. Claire stood, arms folded, her voice already quivering with rage that hadn't yet found words. I need to address something, she said, and I'd rather do it now than let it fester. Daniel blinked. All right. Claire turned to Amara. I heard you this morning, talking to Lily about death. Amara's posture didn't change. Yes, you had no right. Claire's voice cracked. No right to put ideas in her head. She's 5. She doesn't understand loss. She shouldn't have to understand it like that. With respect, Amara said quietly. She already does. Claire took a step forward. You think you know what's best for my children. You think because they smile at you, cling to you, call for you, that you've replaced something. I've never tried to replace anyone. Amara replied evenly. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Claire's voice rose. You're trying to replace her. You want to be the new Ava. You want them to forget their sister. From the hallway, a small sound, footsteps. Lily and Max, frozen just beyond the archway, had heard everything. Mom. Lily's voice was soft and confused. Why are you mad at AMA? Claire turned, startled. Her eyes darted to Daniel, then back to the children. She's confusing you. She's pretending to be someone she's not. Max's face flushed red. She's not pretending. She listens to us. Lily clutched her drawing pad. She told me it's okay to miss Ava. Claire's expression twisted. She's filling your heads with things I didn't approve. Daniel stood. Claire, stop. But she kept going. I should have listened to my instincts. To the neighbors. You walk in here, with your notebooks, and your calm voice, and your polished manners, and suddenly, everything is about you. Amara looked at her, eyes steady. It's not about me. It's about them. You think you're some kind of savior, Claire hissed. Amara didn't flinch. No. I think I'm someone who sees your children. For a moment, no one moved. The silence felt like glass. One wrong word and everything would shatter. Then Amara took a breath. I won't argue, she said, rising. But I'll ask for one thing. Claire narrowed her eyes. Just one night, Amara continued. Let me do it my way. No interruptions, no monitoring. Just one night to show you what they really need. Daniel looked between the two women. Claire? But Claire was already shaking her head. Absolutely not. I don't trust this anymore. Then watch, Amara said gently. But don't interfere. There was a long pause. Then Daniel nodded. One night. Claire's mouth opened in protest, but she stopped herself. Maybe it was the look in Daniel's eyes, not of defiance, but of quiet desperation. He wanted his children back. The house hadn't felt alive in months, and he wasn't willing to. Silence the only light they had left. Amara turned to the children, crouching to their level. Tonight, we'll try something new, she said softly. Just the 3 of us. Is that okay? Max nodded. Lily clutched her hand. That night, Amara transformed the children's room. She dimmed the lights and replaced their usual bedtime books with stories about feelings. She let them draw their dreams on large sheets of paper. She sang them the lullaby her grandmother used to hum, the one that had no words but made you feel safe anyway. And in the hallway, just beyond the door, Claire stood watching. She saw her daughter rest her head in Amara's lap. She saw Max, the boy who hadn't smiled since Ava died, giggle when Amara tickled his feet under the blanket. But what pierced her more than anything was what Amara didn't do. She didn't try to win. She didn't try to be loved. She simply showed up, fully, quietly, consistently, at 9:03 p.m. Both children were asleep. Claire stood frozen, unsure what to feel. Shame, maybe, or something that looked uncomfortably like awe. Daniel appeared behind her. I haven't seen them sleep like that since. He didn't finish the sentence. Claire's arms were crossed tightly, but her shoulders had dropped. I don't get it, she whispered. How does she do that? Daniel shook his head. Maybe she just knows what pain looks like. Inside the room, Amara sat for a long while, watching the rise and fall of two small chests breathing in perfect rhythm. One night, that's all it took to begin mending what months of silence had shattered. But Amara knew this was only the beginning. She had opened the door now. The truth would walk in. The house was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that signaled peace. It was the kind of quiet that holds its breath. Down the hall, in the soft glow of the children's room, Amara moved with intention. She dimmed the main light, turned on a small galaxy projector, and let a wave of stars scatter across the ceiling. Like a gentle ocean. Lily giggled, trying to catch the constellations with her fingertips. Max pulled the blanket up to his chest and waited. Expectant, Amara reached into her tote and pulled out a slim, dog-eared workbook, a child's guide to grief. Not the kind that sugarcoats things with clouds and rainbows, but the kind that gives children real tools to talk about big feelings without shame. Tonight, she said softly, we're going to draw what sadness looks like. Lily blinked. Sadness has a face. It can, Amara nodded. Or a color, or a shape. It can be anything you feel. Max sat up straighter. Can I draw the swimming pool? Amara paused, meeting his eyes. Yes, you can draw anything, even the parts that hurt. She passed them each a paper, some crayons, and waited. Meanwhile, just outside the door, Daniel stood leaning against the wall, arms folded. He wasn't there to spy, not really. He was there because something inside him had shifted the night before. Something he couldn't name, only feel. A knot loosening inside the room. Amara sat cross-legged between the two children, asking gentle questions, letting their pencils speak before their mouths could. What sound does your sadness make? She asked. Like the water, Max whispered. Lily scribbled fiercely in purple and black. Mine looks like when Mommy yells. Daniel's breath caught. Claire, however, was nowhere near the hallway. She was in the study, furiously typing out an email to a new nanny agency. The subject line, urgent, replacement needed. She didn't know what it was. Jealousy, loss of control, fear. She only knew that Amara's presence in the house made her feel irrelevant. Back in the children's room, Amara reached for her phone, not to text, not to post, but to record, quietly, respectfully, with consent she had already received from Daniel weeks ago. She positioned it discreetly on the bookshelf, capturing the moment the children unfolded their pain like fragile paper. This is Ava, Max said, pointing to a stick figure with a yellow halo. I drew her falling. I didn't mean to let go. Amara nodded, her voice steady. And now, Max's voice cracked. Now I have dreams that I'm falling too. Amara placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. That's your heart trying to understand what your mind still can't explain. It's okay. You're not alone. Daniel stepped closer to the doorway, his hand gripping the molding like he needed it to stay standing. He had never heard these words from his children before. Never heard these truths spoken out loud. The therapist they had tried last spring had been clinical, distant. This was something else. This was healing. Amara asked Lily, can you tell me what helps when the sadness comes? Lily held up her drawing. It was a picture of Amara holding her hand in a field of stars. "This?" she said. Amara smiled. "Then we'll keep doing this, until it doesn't feel so heavy." The session lasted 42 minutes. When the drawings were complete, Amara tucked them gently into a folder. She helped the children brush their teeth, read them a story, not a fantasy, but a real one, about a bird who lost her nest and learned to build a new one. Lily yawned halfway through. Max curled into his pillow without being asked. By 9:15 p.m., they were asleep. Amara tiptoed out and closed the door softly behind her. Daniel was waiting. "They told you more in an hour than they've told me in 5 months, he said, his voice barely a whisper. "They needed space to feel safe," Amara replied. "Not answers, just safety." He hesitated. "Can I see the footage?" Amara handed him her phone without hesitation. Of course. Daniel watched in silence. The drawings, the confessions, the way Lily instinctively leaned into Amara's shoulder. He watched Max admit guilt, and Amara not erase it, but hold it gently like something too precious to discard. When the recording ended, Daniel wiped his eyes quickly with the back of his sleeve. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know how much they were carrying." Amara nodded. Most parents don't. Not because they don't care, but because grief doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. In the study, Claire hit send on her email and leaned back in her chair, exhausted. She didn't hear the recording. She didn't see the drawings. She didn't know that her children had just taken their first step out of the shadow they had been living in for months. But Amara did. That night, as the stars from the projector still glowed faintly across the ceiling, and the house held its breath a little less tightly, Daniel sat at the kitchen table long after everyone had gone to bed. The drawings were spread in front of him. He touched each one like it was a letter from a language he had never been taught, but now desperately wanted to learn. He looked up as Amara walked in. "Thank you," he said simply. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she asked, "Are you ready to hear the rest?" "The rest?" Daniel blinked. Amara reached into her tote and pulled out a second notebook. "Everything you've seen so far. It's only the beginning." The next morning, sunlight streamed through the dining room window as if nothing had changed. But everything had. Daniel sat at the head of the table, nursing a cold cup of coffee. His eyes red from a night with too little sleep and too many thoughts. Claire sat across from him, flipping through her phone with restless fingers. She hadn't mentioned the email she'd sent, nor the one she'd received in return, confirming a new candidate for next week. The silence stretched finally. Daniel looked up. "Why did you do it?" Claire didn't look at him. "Do what?" "Try to replace her again." She set her phone down, her jaw tightening. "Because she's overstepping." Daniel leaned in. "No, Claire. She's doing what neither of us could. She's helping them process what happened, and she's doing it with more compassion than this house has seen in months." Claire stood abruptly. "You don't know her, Daniel. You're taken in by the calm voice and the therapy talk, but you don't know where she's really from, or what she wants." Daniel stood too, his voice sharper now. "She wants to help. That's more than I can say for anyone else in this house lately." The words landed like a slap. Claire's face flushed, not with anger, but with something closer to fear. She turned away, muttering something about boundaries and professionalism as she walked out of the room. Daniel didn't follow. He picked up his phone and typed one line. "Can we talk?" Amara's reply came almost instantly. "Of course. Come by the sunroom." When Daniel entered, Amara was rearranging books on a small shelf. The children were at school, the first full day without protest in months. The room felt lighter, as if it had exhaled. He sat down. "I watched the video again this morning," he said. "Twice." Amara nodded, and then I started wondering, why did you take this job? Why here? You could have worked anywhere. You're not like the others. She paused, then turned to face him fully. Her expression was calm, but there was something in her eyes, not sadness, but the memory of it. I didn't come here because I needed work, she said. I came because I saw something in Max and Lily I recognized in myself. Daniel leaned in slightly. I lost my daughter, Amara continued. 3 years ago, she drowned in a pool at a family gathering. No one noticed she'd wandered off until it was too late. Daniel froze. She was 4, Amara said, voice steady but low. And when it happened, I didn't know how to grieve. Everyone avoided eye contact. No one asked how I was doing, just offered casseroles and told me to stay strong. So I did. I buried it. She sat down across from him now, but one day, I met someone, a grief counselor, who just sat with me. No advice, no preaching, just presence. And I realized then, that's what healing starts with, being seen. Daniel swallowed hard. I'm so sorry. Amara nodded gently. Thank you. I won't say I'm over it. I don't think grief works that way, but I've learned to carry it without letting it crush me. And after I got my strength back, I went back to school, trained in childhood trauma, started volunteering at shelters, worked with families who had lost children to illness, to accidents, to silence. She handed him a slim folder from the table. I'm a licensed grief counselor. This isn't just something I do, it's who I became. Daniel opened the folder slowly. There it was, certification, credentials, even letters from hospitals and nonprofits. All of it legitimate, all of it hidden until now. He looked up. Why didn't you say anything before? Amara smiled faintly. Because you wouldn't have believed it. Not then. Not when I first walked through your door. You weren't ready to hear it. He nodded slowly, the realization settling in. Claire still isn't. She's scared, Amara said. Fear wears different clothes. Control, criticism, suspicion. But it's still fear underneath. Daniel sighed. She keeps saying you're trying to replace Ava. I would never, Amara said, her voice suddenly sharper. You don't replace children. You don't erase them, and you don't fill the hole they leave. You just learn how to live with the space they occupied. There was a silence. Daniel finally asked, so why us? Amara looked out the window. I saw Claire at the memorial event this spring, she said. She looked lost. The kids were clinging to her, and she just stared ahead like the world was happening somewhere else. I recognized that look. Daniel blinked. You saw us there. She nodded. I contacted the agency after that, told them if you ever needed help, I'd be available. Daniel rubbed his face, as if trying to absorb the weight of everything. You orchestrated all of this. No, Amara replied. I waited for the right time. The moment you were open enough to let someone in. And when you did, I came. Daniel stood slowly. You could have led with your degrees, your credentials, your story. I could have, Amara agreed. But then I'd have been dismissed for being too much, too assertive, too polished. Instead, I let the truth speak for itself. Daniel stared at her. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Amara said. Just keep showing up for your children. That's all they've ever wanted. There was a knock at the door. Claire, standing in the hallway, holding her phone, eyes narrowed. I just got a call from the agency, she said stiffly. They said you declined future placements. Amara smiled. I did. I'm not available anymore. Claire frowned. So you're leaving? No, Amara said gently. I'm staying, if the children want me to. If you want me to? But not as a nanny. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Then as what? Amara looked at them both, as someone who knows how to build a bridge across grief, and someone who can teach you how to do it too. 6 months later, the house didn't just feel different, it was different. The garden that once sat trimmed and untouched now had a corner of wildflowers, planted by Lily and Max, with Amara's help. The sunroom had become a feelings room, full of books, soft pillows, and jars labeled with words like hope, anger, and memories. The framed photos still lined the hallway, but now there were new ones, drawings, messy, smiles, and a crayon-sketched portrait of all three children, Lily, Max, and Ava, holding hands under a starry sky. Claire stood in the community center auditorium, nervously gripping the microphone. Around her sat a dozen other parents, faces softened by grief and exhaustion. "I used to think showing pain was weakness," she said. "That keeping my chin up and moving on would somehow protect my kids. But I was wrong." A pause. Amara showed us how to feel again, and to listen, really listen. I owe her more than I can say. Somewhere in the back, Amara nodded, not out of pride, but peace. She had stopped wearing her nanny badge months ago. Now, she was a certified consultant for families processing childhood grief. Schools called her, hospitals referred her, and parents who were tired of pretending, came to her with tears and notebooks and questions like, "Where do I start?" Her answer was always the same: right here, right now, with what you feel. At home, Max now slept through the night. He had started journaling, sometimes writing to Ava. Lily talked more, sang more, even started painting again. On her bedroom wall hung a framed page, titled, "You Are Stronger Than Sadness." It was the first story Amara had ever written just for them. One rainy afternoon, they sat by the window, Max on the floor, Lily curled beside her, as Amara read it aloud. "Sadness comes quietly," she read, "like a cloud with no thunder. But you are not the sky. You are the whole wide world it moves through." Lily looked up. "You wrote that for us." Amara smiled. "I wrote it with you." They called her Auntie Ama now. Not Miss Amara, not the nanny, just family. Daniel returned early that evening from a board meeting. The first item he'd added to the company's agenda that year had been a grief support program for employees. The second was a parental leave policy that actually supported healing. Claire greeted him at the door, with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. They weren't perfect. They were still learning, still navigating the long road back from Lost. But now, they weren't walking it alone, as Amara packed up her notes that evening. Preparing to visit another family across town, Lily stopped her by the stairs. "Will you still be here tomorrow?" Amara knelt. "I'll always be somewhere close. And every time you read our story, I'm right there beside you." The little girl wrapped her arms around her. "Promise." Amara held her tightly. "Promise." Outside, the garden glistened with fresh rain. The wind carried the sound of laughter, real laughter, echoing across the lawn. This house had been broken. Now it was healing. One story had done what months of silence couldn't. It didn't just mend a family. It started something far bigger, because sometimes, all it takes is one person brave enough to walk into a place where they weren't expected and stay.